you to back. You got beef for crying out loud.
We used heart attack.
Managers on a Major League Baseball team don't make decisions. Credibility in this situation is worse than losing your job.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
The castration of the Major League Baseball managers, we know it.
Ask me about my win hat.
To start out talking about the All Star Game history, which for many years when I was growing up, and obviously prior to the times before that, the results went in the favor of the National League. And you've seen after a 12-game winning streak, now the American League has had a 9-game winning streak. And it's a simple statement to say that the American League has dominated the All Star Game over the past couple decades. Now, my bigger issue is not so much of who's winning the game or who's losing the game, because if you look at the results, a 3-2 victory, basically 1-2-run games over the course of the past couple decades that clearly could have gone either way. Games that you know are including so many more players than they ever did before. So it's not like you're watching one starting lineup versus another starting lineup. You're seeing a player start and get maybe 2 at-bats if they're lucky. And, sometimes in positions, let's say, there's 4 first basemen that play or 5 shortstops that play, depending on the amount of players that are on a roster, and rosters that are consisting of as many as 40-plus players on each team. And so many different tentacles are sticking out of this thing, because you could think of the angle from the pitching and why the games would naturally be lower scoring. I mean, the National League used 9 pitchers. The American League used 11 pitchers. So you're talking about 20 pitchers used in a 9-inning game. The majority of them were all-star caliber relievers that dominated the first half of the season by pitching scoreless innings and blowing hitters away. And, you expect the scoring to be down, but all coming down to this one point. How interesting is the Baseball All-Star Game to watch? And how does it rank when it comes to the other, the other games that are out there? The NBA All-Star Game, which I think they've done an effort to try to make it a little more watchable. The Elam ending. I think the players getting to pick their own teams, kind of fantasy style. The NFL has kind of done that a little bit. Hockey, which I like the Hockey All-Star Game for this reason, because they're always so high scoring. And hockey, which the one knock from the non-hockey fan against the NHL and hockey throughout the world, is the fact that it's generally very low scoring. Outside of Wayne Gretzky dominating the sport for the Edmonton Oilers in the early part of the 1980s, the majority of your hockey games are 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, 4-3. Now, it's probably not as bad as world soccer or U.S. soccer, when you're talking about a goal. Somebody scores a goal in soccer, and you figure they just won the whole championship. It's like the greatest thing in the world. Oh my God, somebody friggin' got the ball in the net. We understand that scoring attracts fandom. You're going to follow things more if there's more action. Baseball's All-Star Games not really required, have not really resulted in a lot of action. There's a lot more action in the home run derby. And if you're asking why there's so many more viewers, so many more people are tuned in to the home run derby. I mean, we almost had 7 million people watching the home run derby this past year. It's because there's more action. Is it because of the home runs? Well, you saw 2 home runs in the All-Star Game, but you also saw a ton of strikeouts. You also saw a microcosm of what you see in baseball, what you've seen this year and what you've seen in past years. Pitchers are dominating the sport, and a lot of it is because of the usage of the pitchers and the lack of interest in using the starting pitcher. Are you surprised that Tony Gonsolin, a pitcher that was 11-0 in the first half of the season, took the loss in the All-Star Game? No, because he was pitching in relief. He was pitching 1 inning, and the majority of his games, he's going out there going 6+ innings. So he's pitching in a completely different role. Are you surprised that every single one of the relievers that came in the game were lights out? I mean, you look at the box score, it was reliever upon reliever, shutting the door. And the American League trying to get some more, Dusty Baker trying to get some more relievers in there, going 2 relievers an inning in the 7th and the 8th inning, and of course closing the game with Class A from the Indians, who strikes out the side. Is that really what you want to watch? And then you ask yourself this question: how do you oversee this? How do you change a game that really isn't that interesting? Now, you could do away with the All-Star game. You could make 100 different changes to the All-Star game. One thing that was intriguing, the thought of having a home run derby to determine extra innings. I mean, that's something that at least brings a little bit of juice. I mean, I know Emmanuel Clase is a dominant pitcher, and if you're an Indian fan or an American League fan, you want to see him shut the door. But man, it would have been nice for him to give up a run, have that game be tied, and have the game finish in a home run derby, because that would have brought some excitement to it. But for those that are National Baseball fans brought to the All-Star game, in other words, watching the All-Star game because there's nothing else on, and maybe learning that there's nothing really going on with it, kind of a boring game, nothing to play for, right? You know, the winner doesn't get any sort of bonus. You know, thank God it doesn't determine home field advantage in a World Series anymore. The easiest thing to do is say, hey, it's just an exhibition, so don't worry about it too much. And maybe there's a lot of people out there that, listening to that statement, could actually, take that in. I am. I'm saying, hey, the All-Star game, hey, it's a gimmick, a gimmicky sport. A sport that's now putting a runner at second base when there's no reason to do that in extra innings, making extra innings completely unwatchable. And then the fans are like a group of marching soldiers, are going to do whatever the hell they're told. Hey, you going to watch this game? Yeah, sure. It'd be a little different if 20,000 people were leaving the stadium after the 9th inning when that stupid runner goes out there to second base. But that's neither here nor there. There's questions about, hey, what can we do about the All-Star game to give it a little more buzz? Are there different types of skills competitions that we could bring back? Perhaps you try to clock the fastest runner. I mean, I'm not a big fan of bringing in players that are not on the All-Star team, especially when the rosters have expanded to 40-plus players. I don't want somebody in a home run derby that isn't on the All-Star team. Find a way to get that person on if you want them to participate in a home run derby. Don't have somebody that's on the outside looking in. Pete Alonso a couple years ago wins the home run derby, and he isn't even on the All-Star team. That, even though I'm a huge Pete Alonso fan, I don't like that. And then there's the angle of ESPN trying to hype up the home run derby, which they're already getting the views. But once again, examples of ESPN trying too hard. ESPN's behind the scenes with Pete Alonso, trying to get him to say, hey, what things can we do to get more people intrigued? You got Pete Alonso deadlifting on the sidelines. It's going to make a lot of Pete Alonso enemies. There's a lot of people that aren't going to like Pete Alonso after watching him deadlift between rounds of the home run derby. When Pete Alonso's sitting there meditating on a bench by himself, that's going to rub some people the wrong way. Not piss people off. There's nothing offensive by it, but it's drawing attention to the person that may just not be a Pete Alonso fan. You could be anonymous and say, hey, this player's good. He plays for the New York Mets. I don't really follow him. And then your first chance to follow him is a show by ESPN trying to hype him up, making him out to be bigger than the stage itself. And I don't blame Pete Alonso for that. I blame ESPN, once again, trying to manufacture whatever type of ratings they're getting. The ratings were coming anyway. So I had an issue with that. But thinking about the All-Star game, and anybody that's watching or listening, from your perspective, what do we do? What changes can we make to make the All-Star game itself more interesting? I like the home run derby and extra innings. I mean, maybe there's something that you could do in regards to pitchers. But once again, the fact that this is an exhibition, means that there's no reason to put any player that's on the team in an element that's not comfortable or conducive to what they're normally used to doing. So you don't want to turn it into an entire charade and have players do different things than what they're normally ready to do. That's why the amount of starters. Hey, you pitch 4 starters in a game, yes, because they're all earned themselves a spot there. Clayton Kershaw, Alcantara, Gonsolin. They earned themselves spots on the All Star team, but them pitching a single inning is not necessarily within the element of what they're used to doing. Obviously, the Juan Soto news is pretty big with the possibility of the Washington Nationals trading him. And I'm not gonna do what everybody else is doing and say, hey, let me give a bunch of trade scenarios for Juan Soto. I'm looking at it from the lens of the Washington Nationals, who are kind of in a rough spot right now. Mike Rizzo has gotten 3 years of value off of the team winning an unprecedented World Series in 2019. Just prior to that, the Nationals made a decision that they weren't going to give Bryce Harper the amount of money he was seeking. And very seldom do you have a generational type of talent like Bryce Harper. And a conscientious decision by the Washington Nationals was made that they were going to let him go in free agency. And part of that was this young, budgeting bird becoming of a star in Juan Soto, who you could say is right up there with Bryce Harper. He might be better than Bryce Harper right now. He's 23 years old. Harper's in his he's almost 30 now. So they have a chance here with Juan Soto. But prior to that, they make a great trade with the San Diego Padres and get themselves Trey Turner, a player that they have the amount of years of control with. They put him in, he becomes their starting shortstop. First of all, plays a little outfield, right? Ends up going out there as a starting shortstop, a perennial all-star year in and year out. And then they have a hard time coming to an agreement on a contract extension. So they trade him at the trading deadline in 2021. Deal him with Max Scherzer to the Dodgers, yada, yada, yada. They got Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray. Okay. Independently, that's okay. But you talk about Harper, the decision to sign Steven Strasburg. Now, Strasburg wins you the World Series. He was great in the postseason. You don't win the World Series without him. And he really is the example of the first player to come to Washington, right? The big draft pick taking him number 1 overall. He ends up, bursting on the scene. The Strasburg rules, the innings limit. Then he has Tommy John surgery anyway. Wins you the World Series. You don't win the World Series without him. But the Nationals decide to put that investment, to spend that big money on Steven Strasburg as opposed to Anthony Rendon, who goes to the Angels, and so far it hasn't looked so good. So you could say, hey, we get a pass by not bringing back Rendon. But there's still Harper, there's still Trey Turner. And now you're looking at Juan Soto, who very well could be dealt at the trading deadline. Now, if you're a team, any one of the other 29 teams, and I could care less who you are at this point, are you dumping your top 3 or 4 prospects and a couple major league ready players for Juan Soto? I think fan bases are split. I think fan bases will say, sure, if you're getting a player like that, certainly giving him the money that he wants, having him be part of your team long term. There's very few players in the game you could say, hey, I'd rather have on my squad than Juan Soto. So, will there be a team that's going to give the Nationals exactly what it is that they want? The Nationals want, like I said, top 3 or 4 prospects, not a top 3 or 4 prospect, the top 3 or 4 prospects you have. Multiple major league ready young players that are going to jump in and be part of the Nationals. And they're going to want you to take on Patrick Corbin's contract, which, is an albatross at this point, signed before the 2019 season, one that was very advantageous and helpful for the Nationals, winning themselves a World Series in 2019. Strasburg helped them. Corbin helped them. Strasburg's hurt right now. Corbin, it's almost cringing seeing him on the field pitching, making his start every fifth day, because that's not looking good for the Nationals. But, most importantly, isn't looking good for Patrick Corbin. He was horrible last year. He is just as bad this year. And you're going to say, hey, if you're a team that wants Juan Soto that bad, well, take on Patrick Corbin's contract, which, by the way, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. There's 2 more seasons left at, I believe, 30-something million a year in Patrick Corbin's contract. So you want Juan Soto that bad that you're gonna put this guy on your basically as your 13th pitcher. Because I can't imagine if you're a team expecting to succeed, to go out there and win a World Series championship, you're going to run Patrick Corbin out there every 5th day on a 6 ERA, a guy that's pretty much a guaranteed loss every time he goes out there, and you're going to expect to win 100 games or 95 games and get to the postseason. It's interesting, but the angle that I'm taking with Juan Soto and the Nationals is Mike Rizzo and the ownership down there. Ever since listen, how long can you ride off the coattails of the World Series championship? Listen, I believe it has value. I believe you could celebrate a World Series for many years. I mean, for Christ's sake, the Mets are celebrating the 1986 World Series like they won it last year. And you're talking about something that's 36 years ago? You would think the Mets won the World Series last year as much as they promote the 1986 team. So the Nationals, who had won the World Series 3 years in a row, certainly get some time to celebrate that. And if you're Mike Rizzo, you have the ability to bring this thing to a complete bottom-down rebuild if you want. The Trey Turner deal started that. The many deals that they made at the trading deadline last year kind of started that. The question is, are you going to be able to get exactly what you're looking for Juan Soto? And you got a team that, maybe a team that is that close and says, forget about their farm system. I don't know. And take on Patrick Corbin's contract. Imagine paying Juan Soto $35 million, and in the next 2 years paying Patrick Corbin the same amount of money. Listen, if the Nationals can get what they want, I say good for them. But if they settle for anything less than the top 4 prospects of a given organization, anything less than a couple major league ready players in addition, and anything less than unloading Patrick Corbin's contract, it's going to look really bad for the Washington Nationals and really bad for Mike Rizzo. And I look at it and I say, you have a general manager who got away for many years with being able to blame his manager for the failures of the team. Hey, I put this roster together. It's all because of Manny Acta that nothing's going well. I'm now going to blame Jim Riggleman. I'm now going to blame Davey Johnson. I'm now going to blame Matt Williams. I'm now going to blame Dusty Baker, even though the Nationals won the National League East both years Dusty Baker was there. David Martinez won a World Series championship. He seems to be the one that Rizzo wants to stick with. And really no value in dismissing the manager here. Nationals were expected to struggle this year. They're expected to have a hard time over the course of the next couple seasons. And the element of, does Juan Soto want to be there? Is Juan Soto going to turn down $1 billion from the Nationals simply because he doesn't want to play there? And for those that are knocking the $440 million he was offered over 15 years, it was extremely backloaded. It didn't contain any deferrals, which was a good thing for the Nationals. But if you're talking about $47 million a year that he's going to be making in years 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, it certainly saves the Nationals a lot in the short term. A lot less money that Soto's going to make in his last couple of years of arbitration eligibility. So it's not good for the player. Now, does he get a contract that he wants? Because that's another thing that Juan Soto's got to think about. He gets traded to a team. He can't come to an agreement with them. He hits the open market as a free agent. Maybe he gets his money anyway. Maybe the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers go into a bidding war for him. I'm pointing this more at the Nationals right now because they're not looking good. Now, do they look like a team that's going to be really bad over the course of the next decade? They might. You know, listen, I knocked the Orioles a lot, and all of a sudden there's some fruits of their rebuild and their hard work as they have a record that's 500 right now at the All Star break. Is it going to take the Nationals that long? Depends on what you get back for Juan Soto. And honestly, if I'm the Washington Nationals, if I don't get exactly what I'm looking for, I don't trade him at the deadline this year. And you're going to look at Mike Rizzo for based off of what happens at the trading deadline this year. And I'm going to close with this because I don't have as much time today. We'll do another version of the PBS probably Saturday. Mike Rizzo has a chance to either look really good or really bad when it comes to the dealing with Juan Soto. And he could have that mentality of, hey, we made him a big offer, he doesn't want it, we're going to get him out of here. And if he is stubborn and says, hey, that's what I'm going to do, he may settle for a lesser package than what the player is worth for. If you trade Juan Soto and the perception isn't, man, that team gave up everything for that player, then you don't trade him. And it may take a little bit for Mike Rizzo to say the best time to deal Juan Soto may not be at the trading deadline this year. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, by St. Aloysius Church in Jackson, New Jersey, by 2 Ways, 1 Passion Food Truck, located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Like I said, we'll try to do a show Saturday. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.
Chris Bryant was on the Chicago Cubs roster opening day.
I have many leather-bound books. My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Why don't you give it all or a majority of it to the team that wins the friggin' World Series?
I was gonna listen to that, but then I just carried on in my life.
Now they come out as the biggest Major League Baseball manager apologist.
That'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
Because hitters are going out there saying, I'm either going to hit a home run or I'm going to strike out. And if I don't get a pitch that I feel like I could drive out of the park,
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
especially prospect whores and hoarders, are going to be a little pissed off at me when I say this. There are only 2 managers in baseball's Hall of Fame who have losing records. One of them is the iconic Connie Mack, who you can say, in spite of winning 5 World Series championships as a manager, could be in as much as a pioneer. And what side of the spectrum they're on? Were they pitching? Were they batting? If your favorite team was pitching and a ball got inside and hit a batter, there's no way it could have been on purpose. But if you were a fan of the team that was batting and the ball got inside and hit somebody or went behind somebody's head, absolutely 100% unequivocally that pitcher was throwing out. They put their tail between their legs, decided they're going to do exactly what they're told. You damn well right better give him a contract extension. You damn well right better make him the manager over the next series of years.
35 years ago, I could have loaned your parents the money for an abortion.